Hello everyone, so today I'm going to be taking a look at a wireless router from ASUS or ASUS. It's the AC3100 or the RT-AC3100. This is a brand new router that came out late last year, I think around November, December. So it's still fairly new. It's actually not their top end router. ASUS has a ton of wireless routers, but this is the one that I chose to have a look at because I thought it was an interesting router in terms of cost versus performance and everything that you're getting feature-wise. So this is actually just a view of the box. I've actually already unpacked it and hooked everything up, so I'm just kind of gonna show you the packaging a little bit here and the router itself, and then we'll go and look into the firmware as well and settings and seeing how everything is set up there. So since I already have this hooked up, I'm just using the box for now to show you off the actual hardware itself. So on the side of the box here we have a view of the back of the router. As you can see, you have your power WPS toggle for quick and easy setup for devices. There's a connection at the back there for, I believe that's USB 2 or 3. This router has 2 USB ports. It has 3 and 2. I'm pretty sure that the USB 2 is on the back, and it's yeah, there it is, right at the back. Actually, at the bottom right, it says right there. What am I thinking? So that's USB 2 at the back. 3 is in the front, kind of hidden away, and this one has a standard 4 ports at the back, gigabit. Now, the version of this router that is above this one actually comes with 8 ports at the back, which I think personally is kind of overkill for what most people would need, and I certainly didn't need 8 ports, and the price difference between the 4-port version and the 8-port is quite a big difference. So you're saving yourself like I believe anywhere, I think it's like $50, between $50 and $100 just for the port difference. So it's you have to ask yourself if it's really worth it to you, or you know, it might be cheaper just to get a switch rather than having everything already in the ASUS router. There's your WAN at the back, and then your power reset and all that kind of stuff, so DC socket. So here we have a view of the actual router, already set up, powered on, configured. As you can see, there is 4 antennas. As I was saying, that this actually utilizes all 4 antennas. A lot of routers that you see out there, they might come with 4 antennas or 5 or 6, but if the hardware inside actually isn't built for the amount of antennas that you have, then they're really just for show. So the advantage, of course, that the more internal antennas you have, the better you're going to get, you know, in terms of signal and performance and things like that. So I like the look of this router. It's very big. But it's aggressive looking. It's black, so it should mix well with you know, most of you know, your other hardware. If you have like a black monitor, black keyboard, you know, it's gonna look pretty good with everything else. You have some indicators there at the front for your connections, power, you know, 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz wireless. You know, if you're connected through USB, those would light up. So it's all good there. It has the light indicators that you would need. You can turn these off if you don't like them. I like the kind of matte finish that the router has. You're still going to get fingerprints on it, of course, but I don't like the glossy kind of look a lot of hardware has, and a lot of routers are kind of bad for that, in my opinion, going with that look. There's a nice little kind of aesthetic at the top, so it is partially for looks, but it also is out to help for ventilation at the top, because obviously heat rises, so that's going to help, you know, bring some of that heat that is generated from the inside of the hardware outside. There's ventilation all throughout the actual router itself, through the bottom, the sides, and the back, so you're getting plenty of ventilation. So unless you're in a really hot environment, you shouldn't really have to worry too much about overheating. But of course, how you set your router up in the firmware will also determine how much usage you're putting on the router. So the more features that you turn on, the hotter the processor is going to run, and memory is going to be used and all that stuff. So let's have a look at the firmware. So as you're doing the setup process, you're asked to create a password for your router. And you're presented with the login screen every time you go to log in. So this is what it is. So let's log in. So here we have, when we log in, is the network map section. And this is where you can kind of see an overview of what's going on with your wireless router. So we can see that right now there's 4 clients that are attached currently over here. If I went into the view list, I'd be able to see more details about who these people are, down to their MAC address, IP, and everything to do with connection, how fast they're connected at the time, which will vary, of course, depending on what's going on. Over here you have USB connections if you were to have them hooked up. And over here we see more information about the actual processing of the router itself, so we can see how much CPU is being used, how much RAM is being used, and all that good stuff. So this is what I like about this router, is you see more of these kind of advanced features that, for example, when we were looking at the Linksys router, the WRT-1900 AC, that firmware was quite basic. That firmware is kind of really designed to just, set up the router and it does everything for you, kind of thing, and there's not much tweaking or monitoring of things going on. So that is one of the things that I really like about the ASUS router, is the firmware is fantastic in terms of what you can do. And sometimes it can be a little overwhelming, but let's go through kind of some section by sections over on the left hand side, and we can kind of see what these features are. So under the guest network section, this is quite clear, I think, for most people. This is essentially if you want to set up more networks, if you have a lot of people who are guests in your household or work area, that you can get them on your network and not have to worry so much about having them on the primary network. So you can go in there and set it up for both bands, 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. And you can also, give them time limits and things like that. So it's pretty neat, actually, if that's something that you're into. The AI protection section is good for essentially setting up more advanced security and parental controls, as you can see there. So you can go in there under network protection, for example, and you can see that it's this is kind of a relationship between ASUS and Trend Micro, who are known for doing firewalls and antivirus. So I'm not using this section so much. I do have the one option turned on here, and you can tell it says right there about how it resolves common exploits and things like that. So the only thing is that it's not very clear about what these settings do. For example, the sites blocking, it's going to block certain sites that Trend Micro knows are not legitimate, but they don't tell you what those are. So I haven't turned it on because if common sense kind of tells you what sites are bad and what are not. But I can understand maybe there might be some people out there that could be fooled by this kind of stuff. So maybe if you're more of an introductory user, or you don't know a lot about internet safety, then you might want to turn all of these things on. I only have the one on because I'm pretty sure all this really does is it turns off certain features, closes off ports and things like that. For the most part, probably even advanced users probably don't have to worry about having this on, but there could be a matter that it might block something that you want to do, I don't know, maybe if you're torrenting or something like that, it could interfere with stuff like that. But I don't do that kind of stuff, so I don't really worry about it. What's kind of neat too also is it can kind of scan your network, so it'll actually scan your devices. So if they find that you're sending out stuff that maybe you might not know about, maybe there's rootkits or malware or something like that, or kind of communicating out on your connection that you don't know about, this will actually, supposedly, I haven't tried it and I don't think I'd have a problem really, because I don't think I have any security issues, but this is supposed to find, things. And there's even down here where there's alert preferences, so it can actually send you an email if it finds something funky going on with your connection, which is kind of neat. These features will, especially the active ones, will increase the load on the router. So you will use more CPU, you will use more RAM, your heat usage might go up a little bit, but I think for the most part it'll be relatively minor. So the next section is adaptive QoS, and that stands for quality of service. So essentially what this tries to do is if you have a lot of different devices on your network and they're all trying to use your bandwidth, it tries to kind of delegate and relegate everything so that, performance is somewhat equal across all of them, so that one device isn't kind of sucking up all the network performance and the other ones are kind of left, waiting or slower. So there's a few different options you can do here. There's adaptive QoS, which basically the router smartly tries to do it for you, and you can set preferences. So if I were to go and turn this on, you will see that it says, okay, what do you want to prioritize here? Do you want to prioritize gaming, media streaming, web surfing? And you can even go as far into the customizer to move these around. So for example, if you don't want gaming to be number one, you want media streaming to be number one, you can move it over there and things like that. So I think for most part, the adaptive QoS will probably be the simplest to set up. If you go to the traditional QoS, then it's a little bit more advanced and you actually have a lot more settings that you can play with. So one of the things that interested me about this router as well versus some of the lower end ASUS routers, or just routers that aren't ASUS, they don't have this feature called Game Boost. It's called WTF Fast. So it's actually a partnership with another company that ASUS has. So basically this is designed for gamers to try and make gaming latency better and just your overall gaming experience better. So it's a form of QoS, so you actually have to have QoS turned on to use this. It's kind of neat. You can actually, there's a few games that it already has a list of. So for example, if you're a World of Warcraft gamer, you can actually select that game as being the priority that you want to prioritize with your gaming, and it'll attempt to do that for you. Next, we're in the traffic area. So this is a place where you can actually monitor and see a history of your traffic. So if you want to get down to even clients and top programs and apps that are using bandwidth, you can actually go in there and see that data. So this comes in handy, especially if you are on an internet plan where you have a limited amount that you can download and upload and things like that. I'm on an unlimited plan, so I don't really have to worry about this kind of stuff, but I know that there's definitely people out there that would see this as being useful. So under the USB application, we have a lot of different things that you can do with USB connections on the router. So you can actually hook up a hard drive or a USB flash drive and use those as storage amongst your networked computers or devices. So that's been around for a while, so there's nothing really unique about what any of this is. Obviously you can network your printer and things like that. One of the really neat things that you can do with this, I don't know if a lot of other routers do it, but you can actually have more than one connection of internet on it coming into the router. So for example, you could have a backup. So if your main internet connection goes down, and say you have internet, obviously like a phone plan or something through one of your carriers, you can actually have it hooked up to your router, and then it could be your backup internet. Of course you're going to use your data on your mobile plan, but it's only in those kind of worst case scenarios where your internet might go down and you absolutely need to do something relatively light, of course, like email and things like that. So iCloud essentially is probably what you think it would be. It's a form of cloud-based storage. So essentially you can have access to your data wherever you are, whether you're at home or at work. So I'm not really going to go into much of this because it's pretty self-explanatory, I believe, and there's going to be you can find a lot of this information on ASUS's own website. So under the wireless advanced section, this is where you can really start to go in and configure your network. So you can see here we have the band selection that I can choose from, so I can go from 5 to 2.4 gigahertz. We have a network name, which I'm sure if many people who are Star Wars fans will understand where I got my name from. Hint, hint, Return of the Jedi. And you can go down and to the nitty gritty. So if you want to hide that you're broadcasting, you could hide the SSID, which is good. That's pretty standard. Wireless mode, I've really set that to basically the kind of devices that I have, and I would recommend people do that. When you're setting up your router, don't just go with the default settings, because the router will assume you're trying to be as compatible with many different devices as you can. But the problem is if by doing that you're in some cases limiting the performance of your router. And if you're going to spend like over $200 on a router, you want to make sure you're getting your money's worth. So if you don't have any older devices like B, G, and things like that, legacy devices, then you really want to set your wireless mode to the newer ones if you can. So for example, under the 5 gigahertz channel, I have set it so that only wireless devices that support N and AC standard can connect to this network. If you go down here, I can set it to auto or N only, legacy. So by default it's set to auto, but since I know I only have 2 types of standards that are connecting this network, I'm limiting it to this, and it's gonna allow the best performance that way. There is an option here, and it's also on the 2.4 gigahertz option for optimized for Xbox. This actually, a lot of confusion about what this is, and there's not much out there in terms of documentation. But basically, what this is, it's a form of error correction. And on the old Xbox 360s, the wireless device had issues with certain hardware, and it was due to the error correction. I can't remember what the error correction is called, but it's actually better that if you can keep this off than on. So if you're not using your Xbox 360 anymore, really through wireless, then I would keep this off, because it's actually by turning this on, it actually limits your performance a little bit. Not your range, but the actual throughput of your internet connection through the wireless. So this is only related to Xbox 360, not Xbox One. So best to keep this off if you can. It's also on the 2.4 gigahertz channel as well. So if we switch, you will see it show up there as well. So better to keep that definitely off. Speaking of 2.4 gigahertz, as you can see here, again with my wireless mode, I have set it to N only, which means no B or G devices can connect. And I just keep all this off because I'm not using any of those devices. The channel bandwidth, essentially, if you can, you want to keep this at the highest one, because this means you're going to get the best performance out of whatever connection you're using. So for 2.4 gigahertz, the highest you can go up to is 40. The 5 gigahertz band, the highest you can go up to is 80. Now for the 5 gigahertz band especially, if you want to maximize AC performance, you have to have it either set to this one right here or just 80 hertz. If you set this to 40 or 20, then any of your AC devices are going to be like held back quite a bit. And then the next thing here is going to be the channel that you're broadcasting at. So there are auto settings for this, for the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz. I have found personally with the ASUS firmware, it does not work very well. It does not do a very good job of scanning the other wireless networks that are around you and picking the best one for you, because quite literally when I checked, it had me on the same band as my neighbor has, and that's bad. You do not want to share the same channels with your neighbors. You want to be as far away as you can and still get good performance, right? So I actually used a tool to find out what everyone around me is using for their channels, and I've picked a channel that is not close to them, so I could get a better signal to my devices, and there's no interference. So if you can, try and not use auto, because unlike the Lynx, it's really weird. The Linksys WRT-1900 AC, it worked really well on auto for the channel. It actually picked channels that were not, it recognized really well that can't be on that channel because my neighbor's on it or they're close to it. For some reason, the ASUS firmware is not so good at this, so Linksys actually does a better job on auto settings for this than ASUS. But either way, you should pick your channel manually anyway. This is for security authentication method. You want to always make sure you're on WPA2 and then have AES for encryption. Best security, best performance. So here we are in the wireless professional settings. So this is under the wireless advanced sections, but then there's another section called professional. This is where you can really go down and really fine tune your internet wireless. And some of these are already turned on by default. Most of these that are turned on already don't need to be turned off. So I'll show you some of the ones that I turned on that were off, and I'll tell you why I did it. So everything here was turned on by default, like where it should be. So the only thing that I adjusted here was I turned on IGMP snooping. The reason I did that is that if you're doing a lot of streaming or VoIP, voice over IP, you want to turn this on because it actually helps optimize that kind of internet traffic, so to get you better performance. So if you're doing streaming or anything like that, you want to make sure this is turned on because it will help you in terms of throughput. Everything else down here was already on. I'm not going to go into a lot of these, like what each of these does, because you could quite easily Google these and find a lot of the answers for these already out there. One interesting thing actually, though, I should say, right now I'm on the 5 gigahertz band. The 2.4 gigahertz band settings look very similar to this. Is that TX bursting. This was turned on by default. For wireless N and AC devices, you shouldn't need this. It should only be for wireless G devices to help performance. So I turned it off, and I found some interesting results on this router. Is that when I turned it off, it actually did affect my N and AC devices in terms of throughput. So even though when you highlight over this, it says, oh, this is only for G devices, as you can see right there, I actually noticed a performance drop when I turned it off. So I turned it back on, and then my performance went back to normal. So, and I know for a fact that I have everything set to N and AC, so I don't know why this is the case, but I mean, keep it on then, as what I found. What else do we have here? So we have, these were already turned on. This was turned on. Let me zoom out here a little bit. So we have WMM is important. You want to have that on. It was already on, but basically, if you're doing streaming or voice over IP, you want to keep all that on. Optimize AMPDU, I turned on. It was off. And again, the reason why you'd want to turn this on is if you are doing streaming, video streaming, and things like that. See, the router doesn't assume you're going to do a lot of the video streaming, so it turns these things off. But if you are, you want to turn these on. It's going to help you, especially if you're in a congested wireless area like myself. I do have a lot of people with wireless connections around my place, so it also helps to kind of combat that, I'll say. And then the last option we have here is, I'm zooming out so hopefully people can still see. Maybe I will try to go down here a little bit more. Okay, little live adjustment of the camera here. So we have This was already set the default. You want to keep it set the highest because it basically helps with wireless range and things like that. All this was turned on by default. TX power adjustment 100%. Basically allows you to have the best performance that you can get out of this router. So all that stuff was turned on. So I didn't really play a lot in these advanced settings. And like I said, the 2.4 gigahertz section is very similar. With this router, you can actually set up your own VPN, which is quite nice. I personally don't have a need for this for a home, router, but definitely if you are a business and you need to have multiple private connections, then this would definitely be something you'd want to take use of. It's especially really nice to have it all in one router that you could actually do that than using some other external service. So it's there if you need it. The next section we have is the firewall section. So I just left everything at default. Basically, this tries its best to prevent your network getting hacked as best as a home hardware router can do. I mean, personally, and I don't know if I'm 100% on this, but I don't have this turned on. If someone's gonna DDoS you, this is not gonna stop them. It just won't. Everything that I've read up on is that this will not stop a DDoS attack from affecting you. So, and it actually tells you right there when you hover over it that it will use more resources on the router. So whether or not that affects the throughput or anything, I don't know, but I'd rather just keep it off if I don't think it's really useful, because like I said, if someone is has that initiative, and they want to attack you, they're gonna do it, and then it's up to you and your ISP to kind of get around it. But most people have dynamic IPs anyways. I highly recommend this router if you are on the lookout for an AC router, especially if you're upgrading from N or especially G if you have a G router. This is you're gonna pay quite a bit for this. It's not cheap, but it is the most feature-rich, in my opinion, firmware out there. ASUS generally does not disappoint. I know in the past, and I've heard the stories too, that their support can be kind of iffy. So you definitely want to make sure you get something good out of the box to begin with versus going through their support. Even though I mentioned that they do have a long warranty, I have heard the horror stories of people who have had issues going through, like it just taking a long time or them being a little difficult. But definitely take advantage of your store return policy. So if just something doesn't seem right, take it back, get a new one, and then do the warranty as like a last resort if you can. I've never had an ASUS router fail on me. I have owned one only, of course, though. So I've only have experience with one, but it never failed. Worked fine. The firmware was a bit slow, but that was many years ago, and it's a lot better now. The firmware is fantastic. And yeah, in terms of just what I've experienced myself between the Netgear and the Linksys that I mentioned, that this is the best router out of those. So I can say that with my own experience. I can't go through benchmark numbers because that's not what I do. When I do these videos, I just kind of give you my opinion and my overall kind of feeling on things. But I do know that this router, the model above it, the one that has the 8 ports, it's getting fantastic reviews. So definitely go out there. I don't think there's really any reviews of this one yet. Most of the review sites are looking at the 8-port one, which has kind of the red accents and everything. But basically that 8-port router is the exact same one as this inside. Same CPU, same RAM, same coolings. It looks exactly the same, except this one has black on the antennas and the other one has red. They're the exact same product. It's just whether or not you need 8 ports or not. So yeah, I definitely recommend it. So that's gonna be it all for me on this video. I've been kind of slow on videos because I've been really busy, but I have done a video for the NVIDIA Shield that I wanted to Shield TV that I still haven't finished yet. So that'll be my next video. So look out for that one. But yeah, it's gonna be all for me. See you later.